Before we jump in, we want to give you a heads up. This episode is different. It is not just listener stories like we'd planned. This time, we went out and did some investigating of our own in true Chasing Midnight fashion. Our first stop was an abandoned schoolhouse with 1881 painted on a weathered plank out front. We found it by accident on a late night drive, and it does not show up on Google, Apple Maps, or anywhere online. What started as a typical ghost hunt turned heavy fast. Spirit box sessions, unexplained EMF spikes, strange physical reactions, and at one point the box called out Madison's name and then my childhood nickname, Izza. Just as I started feeling physically sick, someone else in the room felt something brush against her leg. Moments later, the box said that I was in danger, and everything spiraled from there. We have spent hours trying to dig up any history on the schoolhouse and came up completely empty. It's like the place doesn't exist, and that alone should be enough of a warning to you. Because of what we experienced, we strongly urge you not to go looking for it. Some places are just better left alone. Next, we headed to Hart's Road Bridge, which we briefly mentioned in episode 1, tied to a local legend about a girl who was decapitated in a car crash and said to roam the area searching for her head. We've been there before, but this visit was different. Two members of our group were physically touched. One person felt a sudden, dull pain across the back of her neck, like she'd been hit with something blunt, but there were no visible marks. And during an Estes session, we heard chilling warnings to leave. So we did. By the time this episode airs, we'll have all completed some sort of spiritual cleansing and protection because safety for ourselves and our guests that we take with us is always our top priority. We're sharing this so that you hear it from us first. We tried these investigations so you don't have to. If you choose to explore any haunted locations yourself, please be cautious. Protect both your physical and spiritual well being because the energy there is real. If you're sensitive to paranormal content or get unsettled easily, you may want to keep the lights on for this one. With that said, here's what we and our guests experienced on the other side of the ghost hunt. Consider yourself warned.
Our first guest is one who was with us at both the schoolhouse and the bridge where all of our weird occurrences happened. Peyton expressed that he'd like to share his side, so we welcomed him to sit and talk with us. So, Peyton, when you're ready, let us know what stories you have for us.
His first experience I've had with the paranormal is I was probably, give or take, 15, and we just moved into my parents' house, and I don't know what happened with these damn goggles. I had a pair of ski goggles, which if you don't know much about ski goggles, they're just to help block out the bright snow when you're out there snowboarding and whatnot. But I put them on. I look towards my kitchen, and I see a shadow figure just walk out. This perfect figure of a person just completely blacked out, just walked out of my kitchen. No, I'm talking to my mom, and she said nobody's there. It's just us two, and I'm just really confused. And she ends up telling me that it's nothing. It's just my imagination. So I didn't think twice about it. But when I turned 18, she told me that day I freaked her out to a great amount because of what I saw. And so after that, I started looking in further, doing research with the Ouija board, but nothing ever came about. Then I found a group to do this with, and the first night I went out with them. We went to a bridge, and we did a thing called the Estes method that I've never done it personally before. This was the first time. It's pretty interesting how it works, and we got a lot of feedback to the point where like the skepticism kind of left a little bit, and you're just kind of wondering how is this happening.
Now, let me reiterate. The group that you went with was with me and Madison and our other guests, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Would you say that you were a skeptic before you went out and started doing paranormal things with us?
I'd say I was more heavily skeptic than I was, I guess, a believer, if you want to call it that. Because I had that one instance and then really nothing else other than bad feelings here and there. But some people can chalk that up to just vibes around, not necessarily ghosts. But I've always been more on the spiritual side. I'm Buddhist. I'm not afraid to tell anybody. And that kind of helps with believing. Once I found Buddhism, I started looking into spirituality, and it kind of got clearer, I guess.
Could you tell us a little bit about your experiences in the schoolhouse and on the bridge or doing the Ouija board with your group, any of it?
The bridge is pretty good, but once we got to the schoolhouse, the feelings changed. It's one of those, not many people know it's there. But the first time I went to the schoolhouse, it was kind of exciting. New location, new experience, all this, all that. And it was pretty good. We had a bunch of talking going on. I guess a bunch of spirits reside there, and some need help from what they told us. We opened the doors and try to let them out, and I was trying to figure out what we were letting in rather than letting out, because who knows what's talking to us across from the other side. Someone asked where the ghost was, and there's a number circle around the place, like to categorize children to sit in, like kindergarten type stuff. And the ghost was right in front of me for some odd reason.
See, what I remember from this was I had the headphones on doing the Estes method, and I was sitting, I guess, by like 12 or something. Mm-hmm. And y'all said, when we looked back at the video, it said that it was on number 10. So it was like directly to my left.
Yeah, that kind of spooked me.
Do you mind going into details about what happens at your buddy's house?
My buddy's house gets a lot of activity. Nobody knows why. And I go in and we start doing it. And it was a little spooky at first, but it started getting interesting once more questions got answered, like more fluently, bigger sentences were getting spelled out. And I didn't really do much questioning. I left it to everybody else so I get a feel of how it worked. But my buddy leaned back on some lights and they turned on. And so we thought it was him. And we're getting through it all and we get everybody out, we're talking, and we check the lights and they're not even plugged in. So now everybody's in awe about how the lights came on. They came on for a minute too, and the spirit was talking about how they were pretty.
Now, jumping back to the schoolhouse and the bridge, were there any other weird anomalies that happened with you?
The first time on the bridge, it kept saying there was a demon in the water. We went the first time at the schoolhouse and the bridge were pretty all right. Then the second time came around, and we started off at my buddy's house doing the Estes method, and it was a short little segment, mainly because I got kicked out in the first 2 minutes of doing it. He said, Peyton, leave. I don't know why. And so I literally just sat in the living room and waited till it was done. So we left. We were going to the schoolhouse, and I have a Ram truck. It's got a nice little dashboard on it, a lot of technical shit, and it just didn't want to work. The Bluetooth was not working. The AC was kind of working, and I couldn't get the fans to really blow. So we just went to the schoolhouse, and once we got there, the feeling was heavy. It was a different type of vibe than how it was last time. And so we get to the room, and then even deeper feeling than when you're outside. It's just something was disturbed there. Maybe we were the disturbance from the first time. Just something wasn't feeling right. And we go through the whole Estes method there. I get caught out again. Peyton leave, go to the other room. But it's only a 2-room type of building, so I was not doing that. The first room, I think, is like some type of classroom area. There's tables, chairs, like a rec room type. And so that's where we mainly did it. And So we decided to move over to the room that it told me to go into. And it,
Which, for listeners, this was more like a classroom setting, the
yes,
second room.
you got a chalkboard on the far wall, you got desks lined up, and we did the method over by the chalkboard. Where I mean, I feel like the chalkboard would have the most activity, given it was where it was people would teach from, learn on the chalkboard, and so a lot of activity would go on in that corner because it was in a corner of the room. There's a table that uh we're doing it at. Yeah, me and Isabel were opposite sides of the table, and it screamed out. The ghost screamed out, "Peyton, come to the other side." I don't know if it meant the table or like life, like afterlife side. I was a little spooked by that, so I just kept my mouth shut for the rest of the time.
And this was done through the Estes method.
Yes, this was the Estes method. And
Um, so this was the second experience you've had at that building, right?
yes,
And you said it felt like a disturbance. What did the first time going feel like?
the first time we went there, it wasn't a disturbance feeling. It was more or less like something's here. Like you feel a presence. It wasn't like bad, and it wasn't necessarily peaceful. It was just a presence to let you know that it's there. And I feel like we kind of disturbed its peace by going in and either asking too many questions, the wrong questions, or uh, whatever it took offense to. Maybe we messed with something that it didn't like, or said something like not necessarily a question, but about the schoolhouse, and that's why the feeling was different. And so I we ended up ending the Esses method. I stopped talking, and then it the last thing it really told us is look at the door. The door we entered from, not the door to the other room, but the one that leads in and out of the building. And nothing was there. We couldn't see anything or tell anything. Some pictures we captured a shadow of sorts, but we can't make anything out at the moment. And so we decided to leave. I get back in my truck with the fancy dashboard, and it's even worse. Now the AC doesn't work at all. The fans blow, but it's just blowing straight heat. Bluetooth doesn't work. The USB, like the aux, doesn't work. It just all went to crap after we left the schoolhouse. So we finally make it to the bridge, and the main thing I'm hoping for is the spirits don't start counting down again. Second time at the bridge, counted down from 10, and usually that's a demonic sign, demonic presence. And so we didn't let it finish the countdown, but we had one person doing the SS method, and it got down to 5. Another one did it, it got down to 4. So I was not trying to finish that countdown, but I didn't get caught out at the bridge. It didn't say my name, nothing about me. And once we left, my truck just worked again.
Our next story was submitted to our Facebook by a listener named Reagan. Her story reads: When I was little, around 5, I was at my babysitter's house across the street. The garage of the house was converted into her bedroom. There was still an outside door that led to her bedroom. It still had the locks on it, one of which being the type with the nub on the chain which you slide into place from the inside, and it was locked. We were watching TV when we heard some rustling noises. We were supposed to be the only ones in the house. We'd had strange experiences of noises before when we were the only ones in the house, but this time there was a loud banging that we could hear, and it really freaked us out. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, like a door slamming shut. We ran to the source of the sound, which was the bedroom door with the chain, which was still locked from the inside. When we approached the door, the chain was swinging back and forth as if the door had been slammed, which is what we thought we heard. My babysitter went through the door, slowly creeping into the bedroom, afraid that someone might have broken in, but no one was in sight. She inspected the bedroom, which had no exit, but no one was there. We called my mother to come check it out as we were so scared. She came home from work and looked through the bedroom intensely, but no one was there. To this day, I believe that that was my first ghost encounter. So, our next guest reached out to us with a brief description of what I think we all believe to be were paranormal experiences. We have agreed to let these stories remain anonymous for the sake of our storyteller's mental security. So, in your conversation, you stated that the childhood home that you and your siblings lived in, you had paranormal experiences in.
Yes.
Would you be able to tell us any of those stories? Anything that you can remember?
In the childhood home, there was an incident where I was on the phone with a boyfriend, and I noticed. I mean, he started speaking. It was quiet and in a distance, but it was things I couldn't understand. So when he got back on the phone, he was like, "Okay, I just need you to know a few things. Like we've got to have a very serious conversation." Um, he had put supposedly a protection shield around me. Um, Supposedly a particular spirit that he had run-ins with before coming after me. Now, in hearing this story, I thought okay, he's lost his mind. It was about 2 to 3 in the morning. I was downstairs, teenager talking on the telephone in the living room. Um, Out of nowhere, the seat cushion got an imprint of someone sitting in the chair. And then after a few minutes, my brother's playpen lifted in the air and was shaking, like violently shaking. These two things went on back and forth, sitting, standing, and shaking the playpen, like out of anger. Um, I do remember being told, ignore what I heard, and that it would all be explained at the end of the conversation. And he was speaking in another language.
This spirit that was shaking your brother's playpen, had it ever targeted him in any kind of way?
My brother, no. My ex, yes. It even targeted members of his family. Scratched them, attacked them.
So would you say the source of it was from your family home, or do you think that it was something he messed with and maybe he brought it over?
That particular incident was definitely him. The other, no.
Okay. So there were other incidents.
There was walking that you could hear on the upstairs when you were downstairs. Yeah. Those incidents, doors shutting on their own, you could hear your name being called. For example, if you're upstairs, you could hear your name being called downstairs, or what sounded like downstairs. But when you went to check, nobody had called for you. Those things happened to my sister. Just a variety of just different things that occurred in the house.
Now, I do want to add for anybody curious, you took us out to this family home earlier today, but looking at this house gives plantation house vibes. It looks like a plantation home.
Very tall.
It was nice to be able to see it and put kind of that image along with the stories.
One incident in particular that happened with me was a friend and I were staying at the house, and our mothers had left to run to her home. We could hear footsteps upstairs. They were very strong, very clear footsteps. There was no one else in the home except me and her. It was bad enough that we had locked ourselves in the bathroom for a while, about an hour, and then we ran to the neighbor's house and contacted our mother.
So, what did your mother say whenever you reached out to her? Did she believe you?
They did. They came back. They went through the whole upstairs, and there was nothing and no one there.
You said you participated in a hypnosis party, and it was in an abandoned house that you later ended up regretting. Could you go more into detail with that?
I had images that didn't make any sense of a murder that had transpired there, with a female as the victim on a mattress. There were random other things that occurred, of course, abuse leading up to the murder. When I went to the house, there was indeed a mattress that looked like it had been shredded and had blood on it.
So, you had these before you went into the home at all?
Yes.
Have you ever had experiences having images before?
That was the first.
You also detailed your experience with the spirit board and the chilling aftermath. Will you tell more on that to our listeners?
So I was at a sleepover at a friend's, and a boyfriend was there, and we were playing on the Ouija. One was skeptical one was scared, and then of course there was me.
So would you describe yourself as a believer?
Yes. I do not remember what the specific questions that were asked, but it was enough that it scared my friends, and they lifted their hands, which, we discussed about not to do that, so they put their hands back on, and we brought the session to a close, how you're supposed to properly do it. In the process of playing on the Ouija, it proceeded to tell us that it was the Grim Reaper. It told me that I was pregnant, and it was a boy. And it also thanked us for releasing it, and that it was at the neighbor's house. It told us which home it was, and it then began to describe private personal items that they had in a drawer in the home.
That nobody in that group would have previously known about.
Only one person knew, and she at the time had lifted her hands. So it was not her moving it when it told us those things. And yes, it did continue to move when they lifted their hands. Just for the record, I did lift mine to show that it was not me, and it did continue to move. When we all three spoke after the fact is when I found out that the details that it had given us was true. And then I later found out that I was indeed pregnant, and I did have a boy.
I think one question that has riddled me, just personally, just with any kind of paranormal, do you think that they can sense your thoughts? Like if your friend had known the location of the personal items, do you think that it could take that information from her?
I do know they travel from where you can be doing something, and it will travel to another location.
What's the held underwater story?
That occurred after I had played with the Ouija board, and it told us thank you for air quote releasing it. I was at a friend's house staying the night and went swimming. And I was the only one out there, the only one in the pool. It was an in-ground pool, and you could feel something watching you, but there was nothing out there. It was a field, an empty field with grains. It kept getting stronger and stronger, and at one point, I had went underwater to just sit on the bottom and was held under. I literally even pushed myself off the bottom and could not come to the surface.
So one thing that you briefly mentioned when you contacted us was that at this hypnosis party, one of the attendees, you said, I guess in a lack of better words, kind of lost her mind a little bit.
Yes. It seemed maybe possession. She would tell us to burn the Bible, would get very, very angry over it. There were other demands that we wouldn't meet. She got very aggressive and proceeded to chase everyone with a knife. Everybody ran into the bathroom, and she stabbed through the door, screaming. Everybody was screaming. She was talking. Her voice was much deeper. And yes, her parents were there, and yes, they got woke up. And it was like she had no idea.
I mean, when did she snap out of that? How long were you in the bathroom? How did you get out?
It was, I would probably say maybe 20 minutes or so after she had walked away from the door and just sat. When we finally came out of the room, she was just there and had no memory of anything that went on.
And nobody else had any kind of abnormal behavior that night?
No. And it claimed to be the same spirit as we had spoken to through the Ouija board.
Has there been anything that has happened here in your current home? For the record, our guest's daughter laughed when I asked that question.
There has been very, very clear walking in the hallway by my bedroom. There wasn't anyone there. And no one to account for it. I think that is the majority.
And how often would you say that's happened?
What? I could have sworn at some point that you said that you've either seen or felt an elderly man's presence here in this house.
I said I felt something, but it doesn't feel menacing. It does feel like they've been here a while, but they're just here.
Personally, I don't feel like it stays here. I feel like
It wanders.
there's wandering that come and go. Like maybe they may come in for a little bit and stop and then move on to somewhere else. I don't. It's really weird to say that, but I don't feel like this house in itself is haunted. No,
Do you know any of the history of this house?
I do not.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that you want our listeners to know?
You have to remember positive energy draws positive energy. Negative energy will draw negative, and anything negative will feed off of any negative energy that there is.
All right, well, I think that's all that I have. Thank you for speaking with us today. And if you ever have another experience, feel free to reach out because I'd love to hear about it. Trigger warning: the following story contains themes of suicide and self harm. Feel free to skip over it if you feel that it would put you in a bad headspace because we totally get it.
Our next guest sent their story via email and would like to stay anonymous. Their story says, so I'll start off with the first house where I first encountered something. From the time we moved into that house, I had trouble sleeping in my room alone because something was in my closet. I actually never slept in my own room by myself until I was 13 and we had moved out of that house. There was activity all over the house, but it was the worst in my bedroom. The spirit, his name was Mr. Tommy, was never mean, but I think he liked to scare me. He would always be wearing a red shirt and blue pants with one gold eye and one red eye. You could hear him walking around and would see his reflection in things like the TV or windows, especially at night. If I was in my room at night, I had to have a night light on at all times because he would turn the light on and off in my closet. When I started getting too old to sleep in my parents' bed, my mom would stay in my room until I fell asleep, then she'd leave. I would always wake up and he would be standing at the end of my bed. My sister would see him too, but I don't know if my parents did because they would always tell us to stop imagining things. Even friends who would come to stay the night would see him. The one story I remember is my sister had 3 friends stay the night, and they all saw him walk out of my room, which I had to sleep in alone that night, since I would sleep in her room but couldn't that night. Then he walked down the stairs. 5 minutes later, they saw him walk back up the stairs and into my room. If I was playing in my room after school, you could see the indent of him sitting down on the bed. My sister hated when I wanted to sleep in her room with her because I was scared until one night. I had a bunk bed, so she said she would stay in my room with me. The way the bed was, you could see down the hall into the room at the end. Well, we both couldn't fall asleep and opened our eyes to see a blurry figure in the other room with one gold eye and one red eye. We both asked each other if we were seeing the same thing. Then it moved closer. I jumped off the top bunk and she jumped up, and we ran downstairs to my parents' room. There was a cemetery like 5 minutes down the road that there's a local folk tale that during the witch's hour of Halloween night, lights will be floating around. I was always too young to go there that late at night when we lived there, but the people across the roads had pictures taken on an old disposable camera. When I was old enough to drive, me and a friend went back there and it was just so creepy. I started taking videos, and when we played them back, you could hear voices saying to stay and one to get out. If I can get on the old phone, I'll send the evidence. There's even some from a haunted church in East Tennessee. We took videos walking through at night, and you can see figures moving and hear what we heard, which was toys coming on, even though there were no batteries in them, because the cleaning ladies got scared when they were there late and they'd come on. When I was 13, we moved to a different house. That's when we started talking about the first house and what happened there. I said his name was Mr. Tommy and described the outfit he wore. My sister's eyes about popped out of her head and she yelled, "That's what she called him," and saw him wearing two. We had never talked about any of that, only that we could feel something was living with us. We could feel it too at the new house, but it was different, like it wasn't the actual house that was haunted. I think it was more of the land being haunted instead. I know the land was Grant land during a war, maybe Civil War, I can't remember. I didn't have as many run ins with any supernatural beings there unless it was coming from the neighbors across the street. We would watch their dogs when they'd take vacations, which was like once a month. So one night, my sister and I had to go over there after it was dark because we went out to eat. As we were walking, I got the feeling we were being watched, stalked even, because you could hear something moving in the woods to the side of the driveway. We shined our flashlights over there and saw at least 8-foot high creature with big yellow eyes looking back. We ran to the house and could hear branches and leaves rustling and cracking like it was running too. As soon as we walked in the door, a lady in an old Victorian style dress walked across the balcony. We called our dad to come walk us back. I say it was Bigfoot because that's less scary. Also, if my sister and I were in the front yard, there would be a figure of a lady sitting in the neighbor's window watching us when they weren't home. If you look, it would disappear or the shutters would close. I lived with my oldest sister in Mississippi for a while, and at her house, there would be a little girl's voice asking to play. I noped out of there real fast. Then I lived in East Tennessee for a bit with a friend. One night, when we were young, dumb, and drunk, we decided to play with an Ouija board, which made whatever was in that house more active. That one would mainly just open cabinets. However, the house I live at now has something residing here and has gotten more active recently. I believe that it is the spirit of my husband's relative who lived here when he ended his life. It didn't happen on the property, but I have reasons as to why I believe it's him. For one, it makes me feel very depressed, and if I am home alone, dark thoughts start to creep in. My husband's sister recently told me that she had to move out when she did years ago because it was making her feel suicidal, and all of that stopped as soon as she left. My cats are scared of it, and they will look up in the corner for a long time and then run off and hide. He steals my forks too. I've had 3 sets of silverware since I've moved in here, and I only have one fork from each set left because he stole them all. He will steal other things. I'll spend days looking for it, tearing the house apart, only for it to pop up where I had left it. Here recently, I don't know what's gotten into him, but he wants me to see him. I'll see him walking by out of the corner of my eye or in reflections off the TVs. I'm pretty sure he stole my laptop too because he knew I would need it, so that's why I had to type and send this on my iPad. Sorry it's so long, and thank you for keeping me anonymous. As soon as I can get into my old phone, I will send the videos and picture evidence I have. Okay, our next guest's name is Colton, and he has reached out to us with some of his paranormal experiences and agreed to an interview with us.
The first house I can remember being conscious in was the one my uncle owns now, but all of us lived in there. We were in this bedroom, and then there was this corridor. And when I was like itty bitty little child, I remember seeing through that corridor. I swear on everything, an old woman's face peeking out at me. I'll tell you about when I was like 15, 13. I figured out that an old woman burned in there. Well, not necessarily burned, but from what my mom told me is that the house was burning and she decided to leave. She forgot her purse, so she went back in. She suffocated. I mean, there's plenty of other stories in that house. Uh, like the story with my uncle. My uncle was really into that stuff. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of the Book of the Dead. He has it. He woke up from this nightmare and he called my mom freaking out about it because he said it felt so real. And then it was about how he was getting chased by like vampires and zombies and ghosts and stuff around his yard. And so he started calling my mom freaking out and stuff. And it turns out, he went to get up for something and his feet were muddy, dirty, as if it actually happened. But he said he doesn't recall it happening. Where his house is, he has like hella land. He has like a big barn in the back. And he says that he can like see people out there normally. And he told me that one day he came home while he was walking in the door. One of his radios just turns on like that. It wasn't on before. My mom, my uncle, and my 2 cousins were sleeping together one day when they were like kids. And this was like a couple days after my mom's granddad died. And the room they were sleeping in had her granddad's chair, his favorite rocking chair in there. And she said that she woke up and saw him there just staring at him. And so she screamed bloody murder. And all of them saw it. Like my cousins, my uncle, and my mom can vouch for it to this day that they saw that. And, she says she feels sorry about it because she was scared and was a little kid. But, what else? How else would you react as a kid to that,
Yeah.
You wouldn't react too easy. At the current house I'm in, there were some times where I'd be like sleeping in bed, pitch black, like no one awake. I'd hear knocks at my door. And there's another time where the bathroom in the hallway, the light was on, so I could see the light under my door. And I was chilling in my bed, and I hear someone walking. So I'm like, okay, I thought it was my brother because my brother's room is right next to mine. I see footsteps under my door.
To your knowledge, have any of your other family members experienced anything in that house?
Mom and Dad, we had this long hallway by the front door, and it was blocking the living room. My mom and dad was like, I don't like this. We're knocking it down. We knocked it down. There was old people that lived there previously, and they had died. And I think they're very, stubborn with how their house is. So when my parents knocked all that down, about a week later, they were like bedridden for like a week or two. Like I think my mom said they had pneumonia. My nana, I think she's the one that has a lot of experiences because she says when she sleeps, she feels poking and stuff, and as if the spirits are playing with her. And the other day, my mom called me freaking out because she said my nana woke up screaming bloody murder. She said she felt someone grab her by her ankles and started yanking her, like trying to get her off the bed, I guess. She was like, I don't know what it is you're doing. I don't know if you're bringing bad voodoo, but it's messing with Nana. I was like, okay.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. We enjoyed
Course.
listening to your stories.
Appreciate it.
Our next guest has sent their story via Facebook, and they would like to keep it anonymous.
Okay, so me and my buddies, we used to hang out at my best friend's aunt's house, and we would always sit on the back porch during the summer, and, we'd all just hang out, just laugh, blah, blah, blah. One day, it was about 6, 7 o'clock. It was just about to get dark, and we're all hanging out, just doing nothing. And then all of a sudden, we see this orb. And like I said, it was about the size of a basketball, and it was white. And it was kind of over Hollywood exit. And we all saw it. So it wasn't just me. I'm not crazy, I think I saw it first, actually. And a helicopter's chasing it. And so we're watching, and the helicopter has its light on, and it keeps trying to flash its light on the orb, and it's chasing it. And literally, I wish I could show you in person. Like, if you just have your hand in front of you and you're moving, just all zigzags and everything, that's what the light was doing, the orb. And the helicopter was behind it, literally trying to chase it. And it couldn't get its spotlight on it. And this went on for about 5 minutes, right? And we're all in the yard watching this thing, trying to figure out what's going on. And then all of a sudden, the orb kind of spins like in a circular motion and then flies off, and the helicopter isn't fast enough. And so the helicopter's just there, still trying to figure out where it's at. And then moments later, it flies off. And so a year later, his aunt has already passed away. He moves into her house, and we're still in the same routine where we're all, still gathering on the back porch, hanging out. Well, my son is playing in the backyard with his sons, and it's about that same time. We're not thinking nothing of it. I mean, a year has already gone by. And all of a sudden, I hear my son say, "Hey, Dad, there goes that light you were talking about." And so I run out to the yard, and then my best friend runs out, and we're seeing the exact same thing. It's flying around above that area, Hollywood Drive exit. The helicopter's chasing it again, but this time it doesn't have its lights on. It's just trying to follow it. And so it's following everywhere, and then out of nowhere, they both just kind of fly off. And that was it. Never saw it again. Well, then, a couple years later, that's when we see all these orbs showing up on social media. Now TikTok's big. This was before TikTok. And, I'm seeing different kind of orbs. I'm seeing these silver ones. I'm seeing these balls of light, like we saw. And still puzzled to this day of what it could be. But exactly like the picture I showed you is literally what I saw. It wasn't just me. It was 4 or 5 other people who saw the exact same thing. So I know I'm not crazy. My kid saw it too. My kid's the one that showed me the second time. To this day, I still have no clue what it is.
Trigger warning. The following story contains themes of spiritual possession. Please skip it if that will affect your mental health.
Our next story comes from a listener straight from Mexico City, Mexico.
We know a guy that he were going to the church where my parents went to for a couple years. And this guy one day, his parents uh, took him to the house like in possession of some entity. The they told us that he was like drinking in some party of house of his friend. He did something. I don't know if the some bad thing about entities or he was wrong and he tried to um, make something with some entity in the house, whatever. So anyway, he broke sorry he broke the mirror of the house and a lot of stuff in that house and start to speak like another language, weird language or something. And obviously the people of that house was scared and call his parents and say, "Hey, come and take your son to another place because we are so scared." And they went and took him here. They arrive. I don't know how, but they arrive here and just like knocked the door and was like, "Hey, help us! And what's going on?" My dad, my mom, he took the guy here inside, and he was like super aggressive and speaking a lot of bad things and "I will kill you" or "fuck you, pig" or something like that. Like a lot of um, bad words. My mom was praying, my dad was praying, and I mean, I just hold the guy and I just make like the WWE uh, thing, and I just immobilize. My sisters were here, and they look at the shadow, getting out of the house.
For those who may not be familiar with the history before we proceed to our next guest, by February of 1862, the Battle of Shiloh had already earned the title of the war with the most casualties of any in America's previous wars combined. The land is so large, the National Park website recommends to allot at least half a day to walk it. And now, let's hear from Richard, who had his own experience at Shiloh.
So I've been going there for 25 years now
Wow.
since we moved back to Tennessee in 2000, and a lot of times I'd go by myself and go
Uh-huh.
walk around. And on this one particular trip, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd gone down there and I'd went down there and it was in early April, about the same time that the battle had
Oh.
gone on, and I started at the visitor center and walked about 2 miles, making I was going to make about a 4 mile circuit around the major parts of
Uh-huh.
the battlefield. So I'd walked, and I hadn't seen any other hikers that day. It was on a weekday, so it was even less people than normal there. And I'm walking down this one road, the Peabody Road, and I go and I look at the monument there, and it's a little ways off the road in a clearing. And then I continue on down the road, and it's heavily wooded on both sides of the road. So I'd walked a little bit past the monument, and I'd stopped to look down in a creek there, and I just happened to catch something at the corner of my eye, back the direction that I just came from, and I thought maybe it was a deer or something I was seeing, because it was early April and the leaves were just coming out. It was
Yeah.
just starting to get green, so you could still see through the woods pretty well. And I'll turn around and look, and it was a person coming out of that clearing where that monument was, and I didn't think much of it. And he looked kind of, and they were wearing like a khaki uniform, like clothes like the maintenance people
Mhm.
wear. And that's what I thought it was. So there's one of the park maintenance guys must be there, doing some kind of work, clearing brush or whatever. It looked like he was carrying some kind of a tool. So then I walked a little ways more, and I turned around and looked, and he was on the road walking. I thought, well, maybe that's another hiker here. I said, I'll talk to him.
Mhm.
So I turned around and I waved at him, and they just keep walking. No recognition that somebody had waved to them. No acknowledgement. I thought that's kind of rude. So I turned around and kept walking, and it just made me uneasy, And I walked a little ways more, and I turned around and looked again, and now they had closed the distance between where they had been at and me quicker than what they should have.
Mhm.
Oh, that's all right. Do they, start running when I had my back turned?
And you didn't
So
hear anything?
did not hear a sound, and I waved to them again. No response. So the road made a little bit of a bend at that point where they were out of my line of sight. So when I went around that bend, I sped up because I wanted to get out of that wooded area because I was kind of feeling uneasy about the
Mhm.
situation. So I walk fast and I get out of the woods to where there was a clearing. And for those people that are familiar with the park there, Shiloh Park, it's called Ray Springs, that next little area. So I got up to Ray Springs and I sat and I waited. Because I wanted to see this person come out of the woods, and they never came out. I sat there and waited about 5, 10 minutes. Nobody ever came out that road. I thought, well, maybe they must have went back up through the woods. So I go to continue on my walk, and of course I was there at Ray Springs, and at Ray Springs you can go through a little clearing, and then there's a path through the woods that goes uphill to where the old Shiloh church is at. And that's where I'd intended to walk because if you stayed on the road, it added like another 3/4 of a mile. You went that way, staying on the road, and plus it was more scenic to go through the woods.
Yeah.
So I start going down to that trail, and I go through the clearing, and I get up to where the trail was, and I thought, I just don't feel something. Just don't feel right. I just felt like somebody was watching me, and I said, I am not going through that woods on this trail. I'm going to stay on the road where I can be within sight of anybody. So I turned back and I stayed on on the pavement and walked back to the visitor center that way, and it really bothered me. And I got to the visitor center. I cut my trip short. I walked directly back
Mhm.
to the visitor center where I parked my car. And I went into the visitor center and I talked to the ranger there. And I said, "Have y'all got any maintenance people that are working out near the Peabody Monument or along Peabody Road, working out in the woods there?" He goes, "No." So all of our maintenance people are working down at the park in Corinth today. We don't have any maintenance people here.
Oh my gosh.
And I told him what I'd seen. He goes, "Well, it could be another person, who was out there." We get a lot of, Civil War buffs to go out and look for the monuments and all in the woods, and reenactors that want to walk through there and imagine what it was like. He said, "Or maybe you saw a ghost, ha ha ha." And I don't believe in ghosts, so I didn't, I kind of discounted that until I got home, and I did a Google search for ghosts at Shiloh, and I was not the only. I found out I was not the only person who have seen people out like that. And I'm not saying I saw a ghost, but it was definitely something I saw there. I did not imagine it. And I went back and drove around there. There was no parked cars anywhere around there. And I had walked from that direction and past any parking areas where somebody could have been. No cars had been parked. And I went back and drove around the area. I could not see where anybody else was there. And to this day, I mean, I've gone back to Shiloh. I go back there all the time, but I don't go there and walk by myself, and I won't, 'cause it just bothered me that much. But it was definitely something I saw. It was a person or something that looked like a person that came out of that woods, then walked down the road behind me, and then I don't know where they went.
Oh. Now, you would consider yourself a skeptic, but your wife is a believer. Is that correct? Do you happen to have any stories yourself, Miss Judy?
The house I grew up in Marshalltown, Iowa, my father always said that Charlie lived there. Charlie was a ghost. He would, at night, we only had one bathroom upstairs, and he said he would feel a presence go by him and he'd just say, "Oh, hey, Charlie." Well, my parents moved into my grandparents' house, and I stayed in this house with my boys. I was sleeping in the north room, and I kept hearing somebody say, "Judy, Judy," and it wasn't my kids. And I rolled over, and from the window, the street light, there was a little glow,
Yeah.
and there was a man's face in this glow. And I said, "Hello,
Gosh.
Charlie. Good night." And I just rolled right back over. One other time, right after my grandmother passed away, we were all sitting around the kitchen table. The kitchen window was open, propped open with a stick, and I guess we were just all sitting there talking, and all of a sudden that window just slammed. You have to lift the window up
Yeah.
to get the stick out. It just slammed. And we all just went, "Well, Charlie."
That was rude.
Exactly. And another time, we were sitting around the table, and somebody had been in the basement, and they brought up it looked like a bone, just yay big. And there was an ashtray on the table, and they threw it in there, and as soon as that hit the ashtray, it just shattered. After everybody moved out and the house was vandalized, and we went back, Rick and I went back up there. We had some guy come over and see what needed to be done to fix it, and he had some sort of a electric nail gun or something. And all of a sudden, all the lights went out. Debbie and Luann, one of them, just said, "Oh, Charlie's at it again." And all of a sudden, the lights came back on.
It's just a normal occurrence.
Just weird.
Our next guest, Erica, sent her story via email, and it reads: "The first ever encounter I had with a spirit was when my mom's friend let us stay the night with her one weekend. She informed us that her house was haunted and told us what signs to look out for. Also, she told us that it took 3 nights for them to warm up to you. She had 3 spirits hanging around, and they are all connected to the house. 2 of them were an older couple that lived there, and they passed away on the grounds. They didn't ever bother anyone. The third spirit was a 19-year-old guy named Michael that had committed suicide. He was the active spirit in the house. He liked to pull pranks on people, completely harmless. The first time something happened was when we all fell asleep in the living room watching a movie. The oven started beeping. Mind you, we didn't use the oven that night. My sister woke up first. About the third time of her calling our names out, we woke up. Michael had preheated the oven and it went off. We didn't really think nothing of it. We went to bed, and as I was laying there, I kept hearing a noise come from the kitchen. I texted the owner of the house because I thought he may have been playing with the metal flap of the popcorn machine that we had left out, and she went to check it out. It was Michael unlocking the back door. They had to have chain locks on all the doors in the house because he liked to unlock the knobs and open the doors. It definitely creeped me out, but nothing else happened that weekend. Another time was when we were getting ready to leave the house and the dryer was running. We were getting ready to walk out of the door, and all of a sudden the dryer door flew open. Nothing inside the machine could have made it fly open the way it did. We just looked at each other and laughed. I guess Michael didn't want the dryer on while we were gone. The next time was when I had woken up really early, like 6 a.m., and went to the restroom. While sitting there doing my business, the light went out. I sighed and stated, "Michael, turn the light back on." And in a snap of your fingers, the lights turned back on. Michael didn't do switches. He would turn bulbs to turn the lights out. I just giggled to myself and thought nothing of it again. One of the last instances I remember is when we were getting ready to leave to go back home. We had forgotten my charger in the room that my sister and I slept in, so I went back into the room to get it. And as I reached down by a lamp that was turned on to grab it, the light immediately turned off and I just walked out of the room. The owner of the house told us wild stories of what happened to them while living there as well. She told us that she would come home and all the doors would be wide open and the kitchen drawers would open besides the silverware drawer. Also, that she has seen the older couple, especially when her babies were first born. She would wake up in the middle of the night and see them watching over them in their cribs. It was definitely an experience. I've always loved hearing ghost stories and watching the TV shows and visiting haunted places, but to actually experience it, it's definitely something. Our next guest I had the opportunity to interview wanted to stay anonymous, and so we used pseudonyms for their names. So the first story is at Allie's grandparents' house, and she was between the ages of 9 and 13. The house was built in the 1900s, and the first owners had a family cemetery in the backyard, and Allie's grandparents were the second owners. Allie was staying the night with her grandparents. She slept in a day bed in the hallway in between her granny's room and the living room. Allie felt a presence. She looked towards the living room and noticed the rocking chair moving back and forth. She noticed the presence of an older woman in the chair rocking a baby. The woman had gray hair in a bun and was wearing a white and black dress, but the lady was see-through, and Allie could only see the backside of this woman. When Allie's eyes began to adjust to the dark, she saw the woman turn to her left and stare directly at Allie, as if trying to scare her. Allie pulled the cover over her head and kept it there the rest of the night. She could feel the lady hovering above her. Allie told her granny about what happened. She said, "Well, baby, they won't hurt you, don't worry." The second story was at Allie's first home when she was between the ages of 24 to 25. Allie lived next door to her grandparents. She was taking a shower when she felt a presence around her. She looked out of the shower and noticed a 6-foot man in dirty overalls, looking confused. Allie grabbed a towel and ran to her granny's house. She told her granny what happened. Granny said, "Oh, that's just Les. He won't hurt you." In 1960, Les and Lucinda were her granny's neighbors. Later that night, Allie and her husband were in bed. They heard the microwave start. They both got up to check it out. They unplugged it and went straight back to bed. When laying down, the microwave started again. Now, this third story is Allie's mother, Deborah. She also had experiences growing up. When Deborah was 5, she was sitting on the couch and noticed a woman next to her. She was see through. She did not feel scared when she noticed the woman, she felt at peace. The woman said, "Don't you worry, everything will be okay." After that, Deb's mother gets a call that her husband Tom was involved in a wreck and had been scalped. Deb told her mother what the woman said. "Don't worry, everything will be okay." Tom had surgery and lived another 50 years. Roughly 10 years later, Deb saw a picture of the woman who spoke to her when she was younger. It was Tom's mother, who she had never met. When Allie was a baby, Deb and Allie were going to visit Allie's grandmother. Deborah forgot something at home and had to turn around to go get it. The house and the stop sign that Deborah turned around wasn't even a quarter of a mile. You could see the house from the stop sign. It wasn't even 2 to 3 minutes. When Deborah entered, all of the furniture had been moved to the opposite end of the room. The kids were playing in a field in front of the house. They heard their great grandmother calling their names. When they turned around and looked at the house, she was on the porch. As they started to turn back around to go to the field, she was right in front of them. Allie also told me the story about a cemetery in the back of her grandparents' house. Allie and her best friend Susan were back there looking at the gravestones, and they noticed a mother and daughter's grave that had the same names as them, Susan and Allie. Now we're going to get into the supernatural stories of Allie and Deborah. Deborah's sister Monica was living with them at the time because she was sick. Deborah had a dream in which Monica came to her room and says goodbye to Deborah. Deborah gets up and tells her she needs to go back and lay down because she should not be up. But when Deborah gets up, she cannot find her. The next morning, Monica had passed away. So Allie went to her mother's house to make sure before they called hospice, and Allie's sister came out and said, I had the weirdest dream. She said in her dream, her granny came looking for Monica and asked where she was. So Allie's sister told her granny where she was, and granny said, okay, love you, bye. The night before Monica passed, she was telling Deborah, can't you see them? Mom and Pop are here.
All right, guys, we have chased midnight. We found it.
We want to thank everyone who has told us their stories and their experiences, and we enjoyed them, and we hope everyone else enjoys listening to them as well.
Now, next week, we want to take a step back from the dark, the gory, the haunted, and we're going to bring you something a little bit more lighthearted. We hope that you stick with us as we bring you something that's maybe just a little bit different.
Night, love you.
Night, night, love you.